We're starting at 45, right? Right about now. Here we go. All right, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of the Daily Gooner Pod here on the Sports Talkline Network. Video casting on Twitter, also on YouTube. The usual cohort is here. We have the fourth wheel now. We have Jacob Weeks back with us. Jacob, you're becoming a permanent member now. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and of course the usual suspects from London, Ryan and Sam. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, mate, thank you for having me again.
All right, lots to discuss. All right, I'm Raphael, joining you from the U.S. Again this week. Chelsea, a second win, kind of bookending the beginning to the turnaround this season on Boxing Day. A gift, I guess, kind of a going away gift from this batch. Transfer rumors. We'll look at an in and out table that we created 11 months ago. And we pondered the question: did COVID clear out last summer what they want to do this summer? And we'll take names, we'll name names, we'll name positions, we'll take on your rumors. But first, let's go back to last weekend, gentlemen. We were shaky. Some of us were guardedly optimistic about the Chelsea results. Ryan, I'm going to start with you since I always park you last, but they did some things we didn't really expect from them. They took a lead early. They got a goal off the press, and most impressively to me, they held the lead for 80 minutes.
Yeah, and defensively we was very solid. We didn't make any mistakes, which is quite strange. We just all hands to the pump, really. We just defended well, pressed well, and when the opportunity came our way, we took it. Which can't be said for most of this season.
Jacob, did some of this have to do with the fact that a red card kind of kept some of Mikel Arteta's, shall we say, most self-destructive tendencies away? Like there was no chance that he could put Ceballos on the pitch this week after his last match.
Well, not having the option to Ceballos is no bad thing in my book, but to be honest, looking at some of the big games we've already played, I'm not sure he would have started anyway. He seems to have gone with a Partey on a pivot early on in the season when we got the result against United. So he seems to like that more solid base in the big games. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure it made too much of a difference to his thinking. And as much as we know the limitations of El Nene, it's a combination that worked again.
All right, and Sam, we'll bring you in here. 2-2 for Emile Smith-Rowe, and it seems better late than never. We waited a long time for these goals, but now he seems to have a real taste for it. And it was just this far from a third in that Slavia Prague rematch where their VAR kind of ruled him offside by a toenail. Youth is stepping up. And obviously, when we get to the transfer section, we have to talk about. It's good to see him here. It's good to see Saka coming here. But I think Ryan mentioned it last week. These kids do seem to be showing signs of burnout. How much do we want to rely on them taking that next step next year? What's the balance in your opinion?
I think if we're looking at it realistically, I still think that we need to have a rotational option for them of a senior level. Obviously, the youth stepping up this year's basically saved our season. There's no two ways about that. You'd look for them to push on next season as well. But as you say, we've got to be wary of burnout, albeit dependent on what competition that we're in. If we're in Europe, no Europe or whatever. So if we're not in Europe, then they'll get the adequate rest time. But if we are, we need to be able to have somebody to step in and take the pressure off.
All right, because we've seen this story before. We've talked about this in our group a lot of what happened when Jack Wilshere was young and very good, and the club leaned too much on him, and then he started suffering injuries from that overuse, and really kind of curtailed his Arsenal career. We'd hate to see that, especially with all the promise that these kids are showing. Ryan, coming back to you, and because this is a topic you've mooted quite a few times. We went in saying, I think all of us came out of the Chelsea results saying, hey, there's still a chance for Europa League. And in the same breath, we're saying, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? And now none of the results this weekend were positive for Arsenal. They still need many things to happen for them to sneak their way to Europe. But in your opinion, would that be a bad thing if they didn't get it?
No, I think it'd be a good thing if we don't get it, because as I've mentioned so many times before, we have a full week of training, of being on a training pitch. Arteta can get across his ideas to the team, to the new players, and with it's 12 less games a season, it's more rest time, recovery time, playing once a week. So players that usually get injured, like Tierney, like Smith Rowe, even the likes of Nelson, that they won't get injured as much because they'll have much more recovery time. So for me, it's obviously financially it's a bad thing, but for the squad, I think it'll be a good thing.
Okay, but Jacob, Ryan brings up an interesting point where he says financially, I mean, there might be some Europa money missing, but on the other hand, you don't need to build a squad to play 60 matches if you're only playing in the league and in the domestic cups. There's kind of a good and bad in that.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it last week. If we don't have Europe, we need a much smaller squad size. So just because we get rid of X amount of players doesn't mean we need to bring the same amount in. So yeah, that will balance out on wages and transfer fees potentially. But then also, if the owners are true to their word, doesn't matter what we're having financial this summer. But yeah, I don't think it should matter too much on balance. I mean, Europa League money isn't Champions League money, so we should be okay.
Right, and Sam, this brings us, I guess, a lot of people. There's a lot of rumors to kick around, a lot of players to talk about, a lot of changes. One thing that has been promised from the manager to Josh Kroenke when he was addressing the fan groups via Zoom a few weeks ago after the whole Super League fiasco, to now the manager seems to be playing it coy the last couple of days, but he seemed to kind of let out that he expects a lot of turnover. He's been given assurances. He's giving all the signs of somebody who feels confident going into the summer. Playing on what Jacob said, does that change the size of the turnover that you expect or that this club needs, knowing that they're probably not going to have European football next year?
I think Arteta knows the idealings of the squad that he wants here for next season. I think that potentially there's going to be a big overhaul in centre of midfield first and foremost, but also there's going to be a lot of players that are in and around them last year and 2 years of the contracts, where if an offer comes in, I think that Arsenal will take it. So in regards to players going out, what I think Arteta said today that all the players under contract will be here next year. That's physically not going to be possible because of the squad space that we've got anyways. So it's just a case of raising the prices a little bit. And if teams think, oh, they're going to be selling, then they're going to come in with lowball offers. So ultimately, the way that Arteta's playing the media at the moment is a smart thing. It's just fans need to start reading between the lines with the press conferences, really.
And that does seem to be something that we encounter, Ryan, every summer. It seems that, and I know this going back to the Wenger days, he would go up and he was a master of saying a lot and really saying nothing. And people hung on his every word and took every word literally. And the meme of the Arsene smile when a move was coming, is kind of, why didn't you do this all the time? But to that end, I want to show the followers, the viewers, and the listeners something, and I'll put it up for you guys. This is from June of last year. All right, 11 months ago, we put a list and we put it on this pod of players that we thought might be going out in the summer. All right, and it involved, this is our list of outgoings, and I'm going to read it again for those who can't see it. We have Mkhitaryan on a buyout, El Neni, and I'm going to leave out the price. We were kind of kicking around prices, but we thought El Neni would leave, Socrates would leave, Mustafi would leave, Kolasinac, Lacazette, Guendouzi, Maitland-Niles, and Hector Bellerin. That's 9 players that we expected to leave, and I'm not even including Mesut Ozil on this list, Ryan. But here we are, gentlemen, and Sam and Jacob. Here we are 11 months later, and only 4 of those players left. Was this a case of COVID kind of squashing the market last year?
Yeah, and the market last year is going to be a lot worse than it is this year. Last year, we could have, if no COVID happened, we'd have probably got 20 million for Matteo Guendouzi. But this summer, we're probably going to get 10, 15 million because of the COVID from last year playing its hands into this season and him having 1 year on his contract. So last summer really did hurt us with selling some of these players, because now they've got a year less on their contract and they're a year older. Players like Lacazette, who's coming up to 30 with a year left on his contract. Not many teams are going to be willing to pay over the odds for him. He hasn't really performed well. He's 30 years old, declining, big wages. They're not going to be paying him big for him. So, but yeah, this last summer was bad. I think this summer will be a little bit better.
But Jacob, this creates an opportunity. And if we let's go into the market now. When we look at some of the names who are being discussed as possible targets, some of them were being kicked around in the last 2 windows. In the summer window, which we recall ended in October, it didn't open till like July. But Houssem Aouar was part of that, and his name seems to be coming back. Rumor came around about Camavinga from Rennes, the young midfielder for them. We know the French clubs are in dire financial situation. Is this a possible sign that Arsenal are, when they're looking at the market, they're identifying leagues and players on distressed clubs and saying, well, maybe we can't get that much money, but we don't have as much money, or we can spend as much money, but we can get more player for less?
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly identifying where there's bargains to be had, and the fact that some of the same names are coming up again, I think shows you that they really do have an idea of the kind of squad they want and the players they want. But as Ryan said, not being able to sell last year hurt us. The fact that buying is also going to be a lot cheaper than it was last year, it balances out and potentially even in our favour, because the margins we're losing on selling probably aren't as big as the margins they're talking about on OR, like almost half price compared to last season. So although it's been a painful season to endure because we weren't able to do the deals last summer, it might mean we can afford a bigger summer this year because of it and get more players in than we would have been able to otherwise.
All right, and it also takes a lot of the competitors out. Sam, we can say that maybe it's a perverse thing to learn, but being part of this Super League probably gave Arsenal insight into the financial difficulties that, say, the Italian clubs are having and the big Spanish clubs are having. We know it's come out in the press in the last few weeks that they are massively in debt. Might that change Arsenal's perspective? It's like, we don't have European football, but at the same time, a lot of clubs who would elbow us out and wave European football around and say, hey, we have Champions League. Arsenal can say, we can offer you a wage. Whereas a lot of these clubs might be saying, hey, we want you to take a pay cut.
Yeah, essentially, I feel the market is the Premier League's market is to dominate regardless, because you think about the money that's still kicking around in the Premier League, compare it to the money that's kicking around in, well, lack of money that's kicking around in Ligue 1, Serie A. Some big teams are in trouble over there. Barcelona, Real Madrid, heavily in debt. So essentially, it's Premier League's first pickings, and I think if we have some smart video analysis and identifying players that realistically in a normal world we may be outmuscled, then this window can be a very, very good window for Arsenal, for players in European leagues, but also for players that are within the league as well, because some of the smaller clubs within England do need the cash because they've suffered.
All right. Well, I'm going to stay with you. Let's start talking about names. Let's talk about one name who's on a club. His contract is run out. He's available for a free transfer. The left back, Ryan Bertrand. A lot of mixed responses to it. A lot of people, some people saying, "Hey, we've seen the damage this club has suffered, not having a backup left back since January. And when Tierney goes down, things fall apart. We put the square pegs in the round holes, which Xhaka back there or Cedric back there." And there are other fans who kind of look down their nose at him and say, "Well, he's old. He's a mad signing." Seems to be a disconnect with his real value to a club like Arsenal. What's your take on him? How do you rate him?
Yeah, for me, he's a solid backup. He's homegrown. It's not going to cost us a lot in wages. Probably, I don't know, around 60 to 75 around that region. It's not going to be something that's going to be extortionate. It gives us a solid backup. He's still flying within the Premier League, albeit injured at the moment. But when he has played, he's impressed. And I know fans want players that are going to be succession planning, so young and to challenge Tierney. I still think Bertrand will challenge Tierney for that space, but it allows us to give Tierney a rest when he needs it, because as we've seen this season in some games, he's had injuries where he's overplayed, and it's for me a solid backup signing and allows us to concentrate on other positions. But I think a lot of people are looking at it going, "Oh, it meets the criteria, ex-Chelsea, old," and it's not the case. He's a solid signing, and he'll give us that experience in the back line as well, especially with David Luiz leaving.
All right, Ryan, he just teed up my next question. I was going to ask you about, there's concrete news that David Luiz is not returning. He's told the club that he's moving on. We're not sure where, but he's obviously not going to be in an Arsenal uniform next year. But it's pretty clear that the club plans on bringing William Saliba back from France, from Ligue 1, and giving him a chance to earn a full-time spot as the first choice right-sided center back. And that's been met with some mixed reviews. It seemed like at half mid-season, a lot of people were screaming, "Why is this club starting him? They're wasting him. They're destroying him." And now it seems like some people are wary of bringing him back. Where do you think? How do you think he fits?
I think he slots in perfectly at that right-sided centre back next to Gabriel. I said to a couple of people that last week when I watched one of his games, he had a 95% pass accuracy. He made 113 passes in a game with 100% long pass accuracy. And I said, he's David Luiz's replacement. He plays that. He plays the passes, the forward passes. He's good on the ball. He keeps it calm. And he's going to make mistakes. He's 20 years old. But I'd rather watch a 20-year-old William Saliba make those mistakes than a 34-year-old David Luiz, who is a experienced player, but we know he's going to keep making the same mistake. Whereas Saliba is young enough to learn from it and get out of his game. And with a solid midfield in front, there's not much. I I go to Liverpool. They've got Nat Phillips and Williams at the back at the moment, but they got Fabinho in front of them, and they don't look out of place really. And I think that could be the case with us if we had like a Basuma and Partey in front of Saliba and Gabriel.
All right, Jacob, lots of directions we can take this in, but let's talk about, you know, another player who looks like he's on the way out. We've got we know Luis is going. We know they need or cover it right back. But it also looks like oh gosh, I just kind of froze up of which one to give you. But looks like Mateo. Let's talk about Matteo Guendouzi, because it looks like rumors are he's close to signing a deal with Marseille, a permanent deal, permanent transfer. Are you going to be finicky about the transfer cost? There was a lot. So Arteta did say about a week ago that he would be open to bringing him back. Where do you set with him? You know, I think if we talked, there's some people on this panel who don't want him back. I'll put my hand up on that one. But where do you sit with him?
Yeah, I think moving on makes sense for both him and the club. I know there are a lot of the fan base who want to bring him back and put him straight into the starting lineup. But I don't know. I was one of those ones who I liked some of his moments, but I was never quite fully convinced by him. And now that we've changed manager, I just don't see how he fits in the system. And obviously, we know there wasn't a great relationship. We know there was issues behind the scenes. So it just makes sense. Get rid of him and recoup the transfer fee. Obviously, we'll hope for a bit more, but some people were quoting kind of ridiculous money last summer. It's not going to be anything near that, but anything over his transfer fee that we paid will be a nice bonus. And yeah, it just makes sense all round.
Sam, I'm going to let you have two, okay? But I'm going to say the back line. Let's talk about, it seems like Hector Bellerin is almost another certain outgoing that's starting to raise the number pretty high. Some discussion that Callum Chambers might stay at right back. We've talked about this. There are 3 right backs right now on the Arsenal squad. Which one, if any, are still going to be here when the club comes back later in the summer and starts training for the next season? Which one should be back? And who are you looking to bring in to bolster that position?
I think the only one that's going to be remaining is probably Callum Chambers. I don't think Cedric or Hector Bellerin will be here next year. Bellerin, we all know his time at Arsenal is coming to an end. Injuries has just wrecked him, essentially. There's severe doubts about his ability when he does play, and you look at some of the games that he has played in, he's looked very flimsy. In his last game, injured his knee, which isn't helpful. Cedric done well initially, got shifted over to left back, and then he's just out the picture. Dependent on if a bid comes in for him, I can see him going. But in terms of who I would have coming in, I'd be going for Max Aarons from Norwich. Kid's incredible, and he instantly gives us a lot more from right back, defensively and going forward. And he would work very well with Pepe if he was on that side.
Encouraging words from if you're an Arsenal fan, looking at Max Aarons from the Norwich chairman, I think a couple of days ago, saying, they are coming up, they are being promoted, but if the key players, Buendia being another one, get offers, he said the club will not stand in their way if they feel it's a proper step forward. So I guess they've done nothing to put cold water on that rumor. So again, as a partisan, I'm happy about that. So Ryan, let's talk about probably the most controversial, I don't want to say controversial, but it might be the most painful move that we might see this off season. And we don't know if Granit Xhaka is going to stay or going to leave. There are reports one way, there are reports the other way. What's your sense? Do you think he will come back, given the kind of the love-hate relationship that he's had with the fans, or the fans have had with him? And if he goes, he's been such a glue player, even though, as we said, like David Luiz, he's got that switch that goes on, and he makes those Luiz Mustafi-like mistakes from time to time. He still eats up minutes, and he's there all the time. How do you replace him, and where would you look to replace him if he decided it was his time?
We've had this discussion before, and there's not many names I could give you that gives us what Granit Xhaka does. And you all know my opinion on him. He's my player of the season, and his longevity, his reliability. Obviously, he makes mistakes here and there, does get the odd red card, but the good does outweigh the bad. And personally, I don't think he should be on the list of being sold. If we're going into the summer with a list of players that need to be sold, I don't think he should be on it. But saying that, if we do get an offer that is very, very good for us, maybe like a 40 million bid for him, and 2 years left on his contract, turning 28, I mean, I wouldn't be upset if we took it and invested it in someone like Bissouma, and or invested the money into a Camavinga, someone of that ilk. Again, they don't really give you the leadership qualities that Xhaka does, and that's really hard to replace.
I'm going to throw something at you, because Kieran McGlynn has put a rumor in the chat saying, seeing talk of a swap deal, Xhaka for Denis Zakaria. That was presented to you, because we know that's a player Arsenal have been tracking. What would you do with that?
No, I wouldn't take it. Just straight
Okay.
up no.
Why not? Why not?
Because they're two different players. One's more of a defensive powerhouse. He's very similar to Thomas Partey in that aspect. He's a win the ball back, give it to someone else type player. Whereas Xhaka, I said it against Villarreal in the second game, he just makes us tick. He makes us go forward. He makes us move. And we need someone else that does that. And I don't think Zakaria is that player.
All right. Jacob, another name. This one, an incoming. We've been talking about a lot of outgoings. I've already run out of fingers on one hand dealing with the outgoings, and we're on the second hand. But Yves Bissouma, player at Brighton Hove Albion, is being mentioned as a definite Arsenal target. Of course, he's also being linked with other clubs in the Prem. Again, some discussion of, is he good enough? Is he not good enough? Where you stand on him? If he was the first incoming, how would you rate it?
I think it'd be a really good signing. I know, it raises a lot of questions, because everyone assumes every player that comes in is going to be in the starting lineup. But I think he'd be, I don't think he's guaranteed to be in the starting lineup week in, week out. I think it'd be depending on the opponents. And he's going to add us, like at the moment, if we need to see out a game, we bring on El Neni. I feel a lot more secure being able to bring on someone with the quality of Bissouma. And in a big game, if we really want protection, he's there. And also, if someone, Partey has had his injuries this year, or he's had a dip in form, it gives credible backup to him as well. Someone who can come in and just break up the play, and then just let someone else have it and create stuff. I see a lot of talk of him as a real box-to-box midfielder. I'm not entirely sure I've seen that myself from his play. I see him more kind of sitting back and breaking play up myself. But yeah, I'd rate it as a very good first signing. It kind of shows you the squad we're hoping to build to attract other players.
All right. Sam, two. I'm going to bring you up to two. One is almost definitely outgoing, and that is Mohamed El Neni. Although there are some partisans who think, he's been steady, but we also know he's a limited player. Is he a kind of player that you would keep for that stability, or is he the kind of player that you would move on because it's just simply time to get better?
Considering that we are potentially gutting our midfield, I think that he's somebody that we should keep, because Elneny, given the right partner, is essentially a solid backup, and he knows the club, he knows the values, he works hard. He's frustrating when looking for a forward pass, but ultimately, it's we can't overhaul everybody, and for me, I'd have him here still.
All right, let's talk about another name. Again, it's this guy seems to change by the week. I'm talking about Martin Odegaard. It seems that around the time of the West Ham game, we all wanted him, and then Real came in and they said, "Oh no, we want to keep him." And then he got injured, and then some people were like, "Well, maybe we should send him back." He's reiterated what you and Ryan have been putting on our Twitter feed for weeks, probably months rather, that he's settled in, he's very comfortable, he likes the project, he likes the manager. Should Arsenal really fight to keep him? There's a lot of uncertainty. We know it seems that Don is leaving, but if they bring in a name like Max Allegri, who's the rumor, the front runner to be the next Real manager, would that be a good fit for Martin Odegaard?
Absolutely not. He wouldn't fit. He wouldn't fit Odegaard's style of play whatsoever. I think Odegaard's a bit of a difficult one because obviously, as you say, a lot of it deals with Real Madrid and what their next moves are. A lot of it comes down to Perez as well, because no doubt he's not going to be happy with us regarding the Super League. But from an Arsenal perspective, yes, I do think that we should be fighting to keep Martin Odegaard, because if you put him through a rigorous pre-season, get the right players in and around the squad, like Emil Smith-Rowe, like Saka, like Pepe, even as far as go to say like Aubameyang, all of them will flourish. So it's just a case of seeing what Real Madrid are doing. But I think that he's somebody that should definitely be coming back.
All right, Ryan, I'm going to let you kind of swim in the deeper water here. We were talking about reasonable buys. Use Basuma, not going to break the bank, reasonable buy. Even Max Aarons, even if they ask if Norwich asks for £30 million in transfer, that's manageable, not exorbitant. But it seems the ownership has promised significant, eye-catching buys. We haven't named any splash players. And it looks like they're reworking the midfield. Who would qualify as a splash buy in the midfield for you? Who is one player you look for?
I don't think you need to ask me that question. You just know who I'm going to say. I've been saying the same name for the last 18 months. It has to be Jack Grealish. We have to go all out for him. He is the one. He makes us infinitely better. Him, another one, Camavinga, them two. If you can get both of them, I know that's very, very unrealistic. But if you can secure someone like Jack Grealish, that opens a project up to every player in the world. Like, shit, they are serious. You get a Jack Grealish, partner him with Pepe, Saka, Odegaard, Smith-Rowe, Aubameyang. People then their ears prick up. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna have a bad game today." That's the type of signings we need.
Jake, I'm going to let you take at that. Is there another name that you have on your radar? It's like, ooh, boy, I'd really like to see. Take KSE at their word. Price is no option here. Ryan has said Jack Grealish. Do you have another player? You're going to jump on the Grealish train?
My first choice is definitely Grealish, but not so much of a splash player in terms of finance right now, but I would love to see Aouar in the midfield. I just think it adds that little bit of quality in terms of moving the ball forward and giving forward players, they're getting it with more space to run into, or getting it behind the lines, not getting it kind of to their feet and having to do all the work themselves like they have been doing. It's going to move our ball. It's going to move the ball through the midfield quicker, and just allow our forward players to flourish. So he is a player I'd really like to see, but I can't argue with Jack Grealish's number one pick either.
All right, Sam, similar to what these gentlemen said, but they've kind of run, picked over the midfield position. I'm going to let you go forward. Is there any name that catches your attention and think, well, if you're really going to play, you're really going to pay, who are you going to go for? Who would you look at, either at the wing or at the striker position?
Well, you'd probably put in a cheeky bid for Harry Kane, wouldn't you? But if you're saying that KSC is saying that money's no object, then you probably would. But I think for me, I'd be looking at Ivan Toney from Brentford. I just think with him, I said on Twitter earlier, I think with him, he's got so many levels to go through, and put him in a better team. You're going to have yourself a real powerhouse of a striker, a complete striker that can do a bit of everything. I think that a player that I'd probably liken him to is probably Adebayor, but without the crappy attitude. Ivan Toney's got his head screwed on, and he's determined to succeed. And I think it's that type of player that you need in a forward line and in your squad overall to really push and elevate players around. And plus, the way that he plays as well, and the way that we whip balls in, it's a match made in heaven.
All right, let's stick with that, because again, we've talked about, I'm going to stay with you, Sam. You talked about looking for target men. And, last summer we were looking, well, I didn't show the slide where we looked at possible targets, but Odsonne Edouard from Celtic was a name that we talked a lot about because he was tall. Recently, I think even Tammy Abraham's name has come up. Part of it is that he's tall, he's different from what the club has. Ivan Toney is 5'10", 179 centimeters. He's not the tallest guy, but I know you and Ryan have talked about the fact that he grabs his club by the scruff of the neck and just says, and just drags them forward. Is that the quality that really kind of sets him apart, or am I missing things here?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's something that we haven't really got in the squad. That somebody to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and really drive the team and drag the team through a game. We simply haven't got that. But if you start adding 1, 2, 3 of these players, then yeah, absolutely, it's brilliant for the club, because if one of them isn't up to this task of doing it, somebody else will step up, and it just gives everybody in that squad that little bit extra and that little bit more grit and determination to really get through and get the desired result. So I think adding them types of players into the squad is a big must for the summer.
And to be fair, this is something you've been talking about, even going back to the Emery days. This club lacks some real grit. Ryan, we talked about this in the chat, that if players like David Luiz go, especially if a player like Granit Xhaka were also to leave, that's a huge deficit in the leadership department. They're not old players, but they're senior players in this very young squad. It looks like Arsenal's targeting young players. Where do you look, or it seems that Ivan Toney's a leader, whether he's young or he's not, in the same way that, say, Kieran Tierney is. Who do you look for leadership when you put your list together and say, oh, I really want this guy, I really want this guy?
From other teams that we'd buy or in our squad?
Yes, who could bring leadership in?
I mean, Ryan Bertrand, he does stand in as captain for Southampton quite a lot. Obviously, if we do manage to pull off Jack Grealish, he's captain, he's a leader. Awar, he's captain Leon, he's a leader. Obviously, Toney, he does drag Brentford through a lot of games. But other than that, I'm not sure any of the others are what you call standard leaders. And as you mentioned, we're losing Luiz, maybe Xhaka, but we're losing Bellerin as well, who's very highly regarded in the dressing room. Potentially Lacazette, who's highly regarded in the dressing room. all these players are potentially leaving. That is going to leave a massive gap in the dressing room.
So, Jacob, how highly are you going to rate that? Or do you think let's let the manager handle this. I mean, he's clearly trying to shape his squad, but at a certain point, you need players who are self-motivated because he can't step up there. It's not PS5. He's not working a joystick here and controlling these players. They've got to go out and they've got to do what's necessary when the game is tight, when it's late in the match.
Yeah. Yeah. We could well lose a lot of our leaders this summer. However, I would counter that with going, that's the leaders who have seen us through to a terrible position in the league and not even putting up a fight in a European semi-final. If you can't gut your leadership and look for new players after that, when are you going to do it? It's not like we've been on top and we're worried about losing leaders who gel the team together. So I'm not too worried about losing leaders. I'd rather see players who are looking to prove themselves. Players who have still got something to show that they can really become some of the world's best players, show that they're worthy of getting in international teams and fighting for trophies with them as well. That sort of motivation to, just really be a good footballer, I think is just far more important to us right now. We've got too many, we've got too many passengers on the pitch right now. Ones who kind of just go around from game to game. They might perform well every now and again, but I want someone who's hungry. Just, might not be the typical leadership that we're talking about now, who they're friends with everyone in the dressing room, they keep everyone together. I don't care. What's that done for us on the pitch?
All right, so we come to injury time here on the pod. Again, we want to thank all of you who've stuck with us through this. Sam, winding down, with still 2 matches to go. Palace and I believe it's Brighton to wrap up the season. A lot of talk about playing the kids. Is this now the time to play the kids for those final 2 matches?
That's a bit of a difficult. It's a bit of a difficult.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, it's a bit of a difficult question in that respect, because you've theoretically still got Europa League in play. I know that's out of our hands, but I'd say full team against Palace. If therefore Europa League's then off the table in the final game, I'd play the kids and hopefully other teams' results go our way, so we don't end up in the Europa Conference.
Yeah, so that's something we've not discussed, but it seems like that's something this club desperately wants to avoid. Ryan, just quick wrap up. There's still a few days, still 2 matches left, but only 5 days left in the season. When we come back a week from now, what do you expect to have happened? Let's not talk about results, but as far as rumors, as far as development, as far as turnover, are you looking for any surprises to leak? It seems the club's playing everything. Certainly the manager is really close to the vest right now.
Yeah. By the time of the next pod, I don't think much would have changed. I think we'll start hearing a lot more linked players. Not sure how solidly linked, but I think we'll get a few murmurs about certain players, but the week after, I think it will definitely be a lot louder. Arteta will have had from Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so forth, to really reflect on what's happened in the season, where he went wrong, what he did right, who he wants, who he doesn't want, and then from that so the week after next, I think we'll start getting some solid information and rumours.
All right. Jacob, similar question. What do you want to see and what do you think you're going to see?
The only thing I really want to see now is some good performances to end the season. I don't think we're going to see much more than that. So, yeah, just some good performances to see out this season in a positive fashion and kind of give us something to look forward to.
All right, Sam, you get the last word this week. What can we hope for in the next week from Arsenal Football Club besides 2 wins?
As the boys have just said, just link some more solid links. In regards to, I think what we actually need is solid links to players going out rather than coming in at this stage. I think if we get an early clear out, although we are expecting at least 2 to 3 spaces being open with players leaving. I just feel that there needs to be a few more just so that we can really start to ramp up the incomings.
All right. So again, we'll meet next week, and hopefully we'll at least know where the club is finished, where they finish. They should hopefully finish in the top 10, maybe go a little higher, rise in the eighth place they got last year. As we said, Europa League is still somehow it's the thinnest of threads, but there is a chance. So until it's gone, we'll look for it. All right. So again, we want to thank all of you out there for joining us, for listening to us, for following us. You can follow all of us on Twitter. You can follow the Daily Gooners pod on Twitter as well. Obviously, come back and listen to us. We're working on we have some other projects up our sleeves. We'll tell you a little bit more about that in the next couple of weeks. But for now, for the cast in London, for Jacob, for Sam, and for Ryan, I'm Raphael here in the States saying good night.